Trick or treat. Here's our project for Halloween and Holiday Addicts Anonymous in its prepped stage. I'm just going to give you the colors I used and the areas that I painted in with them, rather than have you watch me prep in the pieces. So the first thing I did is I gave my plaque a coat of Stormy. You may want to do 2 coats. It's completely up to you. And Stormy is a newer color in Deco Art. If you don't have it, you can use another blue color for the background. And then I applied the pattern for the basic design. The next thing I did was I gave my moon a couple of coats of moon yellow. How rare is that we'd put the moon in with moon yellow. I painted in the hat, the top of it, and the brim with black forest green. I know it looks black, but it's really black forest green. The hat band is painted in with royal fuchsia. And here's a little tip. Royal fuchsia is kind of thin, kind of see-through. So you want to add just a little bit of warm white to that first coat of royal fuchsia that you put on. And then your next coat can be straight royal fuchsia, and that should be enough to give you a nice base of royal fuchsia there. You're going to go ahead and paint his head and his breast in with warm white, a couple of coats. You want to paint his, let's go ahead and paint his body with Irish moss first. You can paint his wings with lamp black. His little feet are moon yellow. Paint the pumpkin with spiced pumpkin. And then what you can do is you can let it dry, sand it lightly, and then you can put on the detail pattern for his scarf, his eyes, his beak, his wattle, and the stem and the face for the pumpkin. And the eyes on the chicken and the eyes and mouth on the pumpkin are painted with lamp black. You want to paint the little stem, I know it's hard to see here, with burnt umber. His beak is painted with moon yellow. The wattle is country red. And the scarf is lavender. I had to get as many Halloween colors in this little guy as I could. And then there's not too much detail pattern to put on, just the knot and the separation in the ties on the scarf and the separation in the sections on the pumpkin. So what we'll do next is get started on that background. All right, I'm going to work on the background a little bit, and what I want to do is I want to kind of dry brush and scrub some wispy clouds, I guess I'm going to call them, in the background, and I'm going to do that with Moody Blue, and they're dry brush, so don't have too much paint on your brush, okay? And I'm going to keep this on the blue area, okay? So I'm just going to go through, and you see it's clouds, but they're not like big puffy billowy clouds, okay? I just want to break up that background a little bit. I'm not going on over the moon. I have been known to go over the moon before, but not on a painting. So I'm just going to randomly scrub some of this Moody Blue into the background. And we're hot. I don't know why my voice is doing this. Every time I turn on the microphone, my voice is, oh, cool. Let's get all scratchy and coffee and all that stuff. So you want to just kind of think like wispy clouds, okay? And we're just breaking up that background a little bit. And we'll make this look even better after we get some shading and highlighting on our moon. So I'm kind of puffing them up a little bit, but I'm keeping them mostly just horizontal. Okay? when you get down, you can just go around your little chicken a little bit. So I basically dry brushed the background, but I kept it in horizontal stripes, kind of. If you wanted to, you could just dry brush the whole background. You could just do whatever you want. So I'm going to bring this down about halfway to the wings, right? Maybe a little lower. Okay, cool. So we're going to leave that be for right now. All right, so we're going to work on the moon, and the first thing we want to do is we want to dry brush some highlighting with warm white. And that's basically going to go all over our moon. Just to give it a little bit more dimension. It's not going to give it a lot. I'm not going to go, oh wow, that really made that moon look round. But it's going to give it a little bit of dimension. And we could go all crazy and add craters and all that stuff, but I think we want the focus to be on our chicken. So I don't think we're going to go with the craters and everything. So we need to float a little bit of shading on our moon. And I'm going to do that first float with some spiced pumpkin because I want it to have a little bit of the orange in it. Just kind of pull the orange from the pumpkin into the piece a little bit more. So you want to do a nice soft float of spiced pumpkin. We're going to go all the way around the outside edge, and we're going to go next to the hat, okay? Kind of, I don't know, I just like to have a little bit of orange in my moon. Now, if you like to mop your floats, this is always a good place to do that. By mopping it, you soften it and blend it a little bit more. So it's not such a harsh line of color. Now, if you're a really good floater, you don't have to mop them because you have a handle on how to blend those out really well. But I love mop brushes. They help soften your piece and make it a little bit better. That's what I'm going to say. All right, so done the outside edge. Now I'm going to come in and I'm going to do the next to the hat. And so when we get down into this area here, the bottom of the moon where it's up against the hat, you want to fill that area in quite a bit. Okay? I heard you. You said, yeah. You said, okay. And then I'm going to come up into this little crook of the hat and tuck some of that color in there. I'm going to come around the top of the hat and down the other side. And then we'll get our last little area in here, and another place where you want to just kind of walk that color and fill up that area there. And that's what helps to give your moon a little bit more dimension. I think I want to pop just a little bit more color in here. All right, so I'm going to let that dry a little bit and we'll come back with another shade of color. But in the meantime, we're going to get out a little bit of Irish moss and we're going to work on our hat. So we are going to dry brush some highlighting on our hat with Irish moss. And I'm going to be using this 3/8 inch, hard to say fast, Princeton Select Lunar Blender. If you paint with Holly Hanley, you'd use this a lot. But it's great for dry brushing into tight areas. So I'm going to dry brush this Irish moss across the top of that crook, and then I'm going to come down and it's going to go through the center of the hat. All right, and I'm also going to come across the brim, whiter in the center and kind of fading out into the sides there. And we do want to touch just a little bit in the inside, in the part of the hat that kind of curves back around the head. Okay, I'm going to go back to my moon, and I'm going to float shading again with a very well blended out float of burnt umber. This isn't going to be quite as wide of a float. If it gets as wide, it's okay. Again, I'm going to start on that outside edge. I'm trying to keep it thinner. And here's where your mop brush will really come in handy. I got a little wide, but I think it'll be okay. Just want to give the moon a more definite edge. And I am also going to tuck the shading in around the hat. Now be sure that you're blending that out, that you don't have just a dark burnt umber float, okay? So I'm going to come up here next to the hat and in that crook, like a chicken coop, crook. Also across the here, and walk it up just a little bit, not as much as you did the orange. I'm going around the top of my hat, down the other side. And I'm going to soften that. And then across the bottom here, I'm going to fill that up a little bit. But again, not as much as I did with the orange. So what we need to do now is we need to float some shading on the background around this design, okay? All right, so we're going to float shading on the background next to our design. We're going to do that with Midnight Blue, which is an oldie, but a goodie. Deep Midnight Blue would work if you don't have Midnight Blue, but I wanted something that was a little bit more intense. So I'm going to go all the way around my moon. Obviously, I'm going to go on my moon. Not what I wanted. But I'm going to go around it. I'm going to try to stay off of it. But, you know, it happens. And here too, when you get to little V areas. You want to walk the color out, kind of round that shading a little bit. I'm going to go around the hat. There's another V area. Down his body, around that scarf. Let's get around those wings. Okay. His little feet, you got to get around those guys. Again, I walk that color out a little bit there. Don't worry too much if you get paint on his little feet. He has a little bit of grass that's going to go around and in front of his toes a little bit. Of course, they're not really called toes. I don't know what they're called. Claws. His foot appendages. How's that? That sounds real technical. Around our pumpkin. Okay, we're getting there. Slowly but surely we're getting around this design. Again, I walk that color out there. And I know I already did this, but I want to deepen this a little bit more around the moon. So I'm just going to go over it again. Just the moon. Okay, so we've shaded around the design on the background with midnight blue. So what I want to do now is I want to come back with the brush I dry brushed with, and I'm going to start highlighting those little wispy clouds that I put in the sky. And I'm going to do that by picking up some Moody Blue first and then some warm white, because I don't want to go straight warm white just yet. So I'm going to lighten up that Moody Blue a little bit, and I'm just going to kind of drag this color across like this to highlight it a little bit. And if you need a place to put a cloud that you didn't have before, you could do that here. But one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to start pulling these clouds across the moon a little bit, just because I can, no, just to make the moon be in with the mix here. And we are going to come back and brighten them up just a little bit with some warm white. But here's the deal. You don't want to go over your little chicken. You just want to bring it into the moon a little bit. And it doesn't have to be a lot. just a kind of a cloudy, dark night sky. At least what I'm going to call it. That's what I'm going to call it anyway. Okay. And just wipe out that dry brush a little bit. Pick up straight, warm white. And what we're going to do is we're going to focus mainly on the ones that are over the moon. We're going to touch a little bit of warm white onto those. Alright, so it's a very, I don't know what you'd call it. What do they call that? Where the clouds are kind of stacked up. You know, I listen to the weather a lot out here. But I have yet to learn a lot of the terminology. Alright, so then as you get closer to the ground, it's a little bit less. Where you're popping color on them, popping warm white. Okay? And don't panic too much because this is going to say chick up here. It's going to cover some of that. But I do want to get this guy a little bit more. All right. So now that we've got those clouds on there, we can come back and we can float shading around this outside edge with midnight blue. And I'm going to go ahead and use a larger flat brush because I want this shading to be a little bit wider. I'm just going to go all the way around the outside edge. And we're going to just send those clouds back a little bit. All right, let's back off and see. Dry it and we'll take a good look at it and see what we got. Okay, yeah, I like it. All right, so let's go back to our hat and we're gonna go ahead and float some shading on the hat and the brim with lamp black. On the top of the hat, above the brim, I'll get closer. Okay, I'm going to float some shading on the hat. I'm going to start by floating right above the hat band. This is with lamp black. And while I let that dry, I'm going to go in the brim area next to his head. Let's see. both sides. Right, so then I'm going to also go on the lower edge of the hat. And again, you're going to walk that color out a little bit where it comes to meet the above the hat band. I'm also going to go in the brim, under the front of the brim. Got a little bit off there, but it's easy enough to clean. I need to do the other side. Okay, I'm going to do the other side of the top of the hat. Okay, and let's do just the outside edges of the brim. It's kind of like a C stroke you get in there. I am going to float a little bit of Irish moss highlight across this lower edge of the brim. And that just brings that front part of the brim forward a little bit. Now I do believe his little hat needs to have something. So I'm thinking I'm going to go with some spiced pumpkin and some, or maybe moon yellow dots. So I'm going to do that with a stylus, and I'm just going to add some dots just to give his hat a little bit of character. And I'm going to go ahead and do the rim also, but not the inside of the rim, just the top of that rim. They don't have to be all the same size dots. I'm going to come in with some spiced pumpkin now. And here's another way to pull colors from the design into different areas, okay? That wasn't a very good dot. So yeah, we're just giving his hat a little character. Now if you wanted to do something else, it's your chicken hat. I think I'm ending up with a whole lot more orange than I did yellow. That's okay. I like orange. Okay, So your assignment now is to keep your fingers and your hands out of those dots. So as long as we have moon yellow and warm white and burnt umber on our palette, let's go ahead and go down to our pumpkin and we'll get some work done on him. That kind of keeps us away from our dots for a little bit. Okay, so again, I'm going to use this Princeton Lunar Blender, and I'm going to dry brush some highlight on each section of the pumpkin with moon yellow. Go in between his little eyes. Okay. So he's not going to look good for a while. But if you painted pumpkins with me, you know that's something that happens. So while we let that dry brushing dry, let's take our liner brush. I'm going to use a number 2 and some warm white. And I'm just going to line some highlighting on his little feet. Just kind of keep it in the center of his feet. Let's go ahead and float a highlight on our pumpkin with moon yellow. Blend it out really well. It's going to look really bad. It may get on the little eyes you painted in, but they're easy enough to clean up. But we're going to start on the outside edge and add this float, this highlight of moon yellow on the outside edge. You can go through his eyes, or you can kind of paint around him, but you're going to get paint on his eyes. It's a given. It'll be okay, trust me. And boy, he looks ugly, doesn't he? Okay, now here's the trick. Don't get your hand in those polka dots. I'm going to do the other side. And the other side of the center. All right, let's let that dry. We'll go back to his little feet, and I'm going to float first a little bit of burnt umber where his claw goes into his little body. And then I also want to float a little bit of color, and this means you just turn your brush so you're just using the tip of it. I'm going to go across the bottom of his little claws. Okay, on this little guy over here, you're just going to float where it goes behind the pumpkin. With your teeny tiniest liner, this is a 10-aught. I'm just going to take some burnt umber, thin it down just a little bit, and I'm just going to add some little lines. You know how chickens have those little lines on their claws. Think like a chicken. So now we can go back to our pumpkin, and we are going to float our first layer of shading with Country Red. And it's going to go more places than our highlight did. Just a warning. So the first places it's going to go on the outside sections next to the inside section. And again, turning it over. Don't get your fingers or hands into your dots. That's the sound somebody makes when they want to sell me something. All right. So I think what we're going to do is we are going to go to the body while we let those two floats dry. And I'm going to dry brush highlighting on the body with moon yellow first. And it's basically going to go all over. Again, don't get your fingers in your dots. I always plant a finger, and I almost planted it right into the dots. That wouldn't have been good. Okay, so we've got some dry brushing on our little green body. We can go back to our pumpkin now and add some more floats of country red. And these are going to go in the top and the bottom of each section, okay? So they're like little C strokes. This is going to give him some shape and some dimension. So we're just going to float this country red in the top of each section. And then I'm going to turn around and I'm going to do the same thing in the bottom of each section. And yes, it's going to go over highlighting that you did, but it'll be okay. So I always start, I do it like a C. I always start a little bit up the side and finish a little bit up the side. Okay. So now we need to let that dry because we have more shading to do. So our little body here, what I want to do is I want to take a 1/4 inch filbert comb and I want to start putting some little feathers on his little body. I'm going to start those with black forest green and Irish moss kind of mixed together. And then the middle is going to be basically Irish moss with a little bit of moon yellow, but not much. And then as we get up into like the shoulder area and stuff, it's going to be Irish moss plus a little bit more moon yellow. So first black forest green plus Irish moss. Really actually makes a pretty color. Half and half. And I just want to kind of start stroking some little feathers. I'm going to follow the shape of his body. It's kind of curvy. And I'm probably going to do a couple of rows. And they don't have to be perfect little feathers. We just want to give the idea that there's feathers there. Okay. So now I'm going to wash this brush out. I'm going to go with Irish moss plus just a touch of moon yellow. Not a lot. Needs to be just a little bit lighter than the base coat of Irish moss. And we're going to go with some lighter. So I think I could add a little bit more Irish moss. So it's not going to show up a whole lot. Just saying. And I think I'll only do one row of that. Then I'm going to pick up some more moon yellow and just a touch of warm white. Not too much because that will make it all muddy. And we're going to do, these feathers are a little shorter. I think I'm just going to go right over those ones I just did, just so you can see them better. So Irish moss plus moon yellow plus just a touch of warm white. So this little guy has some feathers on him. And if you can get your brush up into that shoulder area, that would be great. If not, it'll be okay because we shade in there. Alright, so we're going to let his little feathers rest for a minute. We're going to go back to our pumpkin and we're going to float shading again. Everywhere we just floated it with Country Red, we're going to do it with very well blended out burnt umber. So I'm going to go next to that center section. I'm going to turn this over. Dots should be getting pretty dry now, so I don't think you have to worry about them quite as much. Right, I want to let that dry. While I'm letting that dry, what I'm going to do is I'm going to float a highlight on the left side of the stem with some Irish moss. Now you can see the stem. And I'm going to go back. I know, this is horrible. I'm going to go back with my little liner brush and some warm white. And I'm going to add a highlight dot to the larger dots that are on the hat. You don't have to do all these tiny little ones. But the larger ones, you want to give them a little highlight dot. You had to know this was going to happen. But it really does make a difference. All these little extra things. We can go back to our pumpkin now and float shading again with very well blended out burnt umber. And I had started this and got one shade done, and I was rudely interrupted by some cactus blooms. So if you were here, you would just ooh and ah about them. So I'm going to continue adding that next layer of shading, and it's going to go everywhere that you shaded with Country Red. So I did the right side of the center, so now I'm going to work on the left side. Alrighty. Now we do need to go in the top and the bottom of each of those sections, but I'm going to let this dry. And I'm going to move back to the body, and I'm going to float some shading on the body with that black forest green. And basically it's going to go everywhere, every edge. Again, blend it out. It's kind of transparent, but you want it to be nice and soft. So let's go next to the wing and then down around the pumpkin. Again, that's a little V area, so you want to walk that color out a little bit. And here's another V area. So we're going to kind of obliterate those darker feathers. So I may come back and add another row of Black Forest green feathers. Now, when you get to his little leg, just go straight across, okay? We'll just put a little highlight, a little highlight on that leg later. So I'm just going to continue around, go up against the other wing. And here's another part where you can just get up on the little edge of your side-loaded brush. And let's go ahead and tuck a little in here too. And then we want to go around underneath the breast. All this talk about chicken breasts and wings. I'm hungry. Fried chicken is one of my favorite things. I used to make it all the time, but then we thought, oh, we need to get healthy. So I hardly ever make fried chicken anymore. That doesn't mean I don't go out and buy it. All right. So we've got that shading done. We're going to come back to our pumpkin and do shading with burnt umber in the top of each section. Remember, those are little C strokes. Kind of gives it shape. And then I'm going to do the bottom of each section. Okay, so we've got a little pumpkin there. Now we do need to clean up that those eyes and that mouth a little bit, not too terrible much. So I'm just going to take some lamp black and clean that up a little bit. You don't have to repaint the whole thing. Unless you just want to. There's a lot of stuff that goes inside these little eyes and mouth. Alrighty. And the mouth isn't too bad. Alright, so I am going to come back with my filbert comb and some Black Forest green, and I know I mixed a little Irish moss with it the last time, but I'm not going to do that this time. Just going to go straight and add some darker feathers. Oh yeah, that's better. Perfect. Well, I wouldn't say perfect, but I would say perfect. Okay, so let's dry brush some highlighting with Moody Blue on these wings and get those guys done. This little guy works up a lot quicker than you would think. So just a little bit of Moody Blue highlighting on our wings. Just trying to make sure I have nowhere that I need to keep my hands out of, because if I did, I would for sure put my hand in it. It's just what I do. See, like I have right here, I got to keep my hand out of that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and work on his head and his breast a little bit. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to float some very well blended out Moody Blue, basically every edge. So I'm going to start down the side of his head. And I'll come next to his little scarf. And let's go down this side of his head. And then we're going to go on his breast next to the scarf. And we have just a little place right here that basically gets filled up with Moody Blue. We're going to go across his head under the hat. And yeah, you're going to go over the eyes a little bit. But I think you can just clean those up. And we won't have to repaint them. We're going to go down this edge of the breast. I want to go next to the beak and around the wattle. We're really turning that head and breast area blue. You want to go above his beak. And then I'm going to take a liner brush. I'm going to thin down some Moody Blue, and I'm going to line that shadow above each eye. So it's like a big crescent shaped stroke. It starts thin, and then as it gets above the eye, you flatten out and then come back up to the tip on the other side. All right, so he needs a few feathers on his breast at least. So I'm going to thin down some Moody Blue, and again with my 1/4-inch filbert comb, I'm just going to stroke some little feathers. They're not lined up real well. They're kind of all willy-nilly wherever you want to stick one. And we can go ahead and add a few above the scarf, but not all the way up. Just, that's enough. All right, let's go back to our pumpkin. And what we need to do, and as long as we're doing this to the pumpkin's eyes and mouth, we can go ahead and do it to the chick's eyes too. We need some warm white, and I'm just going to scrub a little bit of warm white in the top of the eyes and through the center of the mouth, okay? So just a little warm white in the mouth. It's very little. And a little warm white in the top of the eyes. And we'll go ahead and do that to chick's eyes too, and that got a little lot much, but it'll be okay. And as long as we're dry brushing with warm white, let's add a little bit brighter warm white highlight on the pumpkin, just to give it a little bit more shape. So I did the 2 outside edges and just a tiny bit in the center section below the mouth. I'm going to also dry brush warm white in the top of the beak. So a lot of places with warm white. In the eyes, in the mouth, in the eyes, the beak, and a little bit on the pumpkin itself, just to give it a little bit more shape. So usually my pumpkins have blue eyes. So yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and make his eyes blue. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to corner load into Moody Blue. I'm not going to blend it out as much because I want a bit more paint left on the brush. And I'm just going to do a little C-stroke of Moody Blue in the bottom of each eye. And our chicken, I think I'll give our chicken green eyes. So I'm going to do the same thing to the chicken, but I'm going to do it with Irish moss. I'm going to give him some little green eyes. So with our liner brush, again the number 2, I'm going to pick up some Moody Blue. I'm going to pick up a little warm white and just brush mix a little bit of a lighter value of Moody Blue. And I'm just going to line a little highlight in the center of that blue C-stroke that we did. And then what I want to do is straight warm white. I want to give my little guy a tooth, because I always like to give my jack-o'-lanterns teeth. This guy only has 1. And now you want to give him some highlights in his eyes. I'm just going to do that with my liner brush. Just give him a little highlight dot of warm white in the top of the eyes, and then a little slash that rides the blue and the black. So let's go to our chicken's eyes, and again with the Irish moss and a little bit of warm white, just a little bit lighter value. I'm going to line a highlight in the center of that green stroke on his eyes. Let's give our chicken some cheeks. He just wouldn't look right if he didn't have some cute little cheeks. So I'm going to take some country red and some royal fuchsia. Red was too red and royal fuchsia was too pink. So I went ahead and I'm going to mix the 2, half and half. Makes kind of a pretty color. So let's give him some little cheeks. We're also going to take our tiniest liner brush, a 10-aught, and some thinned lamp black. And I want to give him a couple little squiggly eyelashes. Pumpkin doesn't get eyelashes. And then I'm going to highlight in the chicken's eyes. Now we need to add some more color to his little breast. So I'm going to do that with some spiced pumpkin. I feel like it needs a little wash or a little float of some very well blended out spiced pumpkin. And this is going to go across the bottom of his breast. So now we're pulling some of the color of the moon and the pumpkin into our little guy. I'm also going to float a little bit deeper shading on above the scarf with very well blended out burnt umber. I'm also going to do this if my eyelashes are dry under the hat. I'm really kinda not liking that highlight in his eyes. So I'm going to get rid of it. I think that looks better. Yep. All right, now I like his eyes better. So I basically painted over the one of the warm white highlights that was in his eyes, and I painted in the background because the dry brush got a little too bright. We need to do something to his wings, and I think what we can do is line some plaid on his wings. So I'm going to take my number 2, and I think Moody Blue plaid. I go, now remember the shape of the wings. They're kind of rounded. So I've got the horizontals in. And let's do a vertical. Now let's line a little highlight on that plaid. I'm just going to pick up some warm white and add just a touch of Moody Blue. I'm just going to highlight the center of that plaid a little bit. I think I'm going to add another color, but we'll see how this looks. Less is more, right? Okay. We may come back and add another color. We might not. Who knows? Okay, let's pop a little highlight of moon yellow on those legs, or leg, right? Just one of them we need to think about. So I just want to add a little bit of moon yellow to that leg. Back off a little bit and see what we got. I really want to do something to break up this line right here. So I'm going to come back with Stormy, which is a little bit deeper than Moody Blue. It was our background color. And I'm going to stroke some feathers that go beyond that separation between the breast and the body. And we'll see how that looks. Just want to break it up. Okay. Even with the orange behind it, it's great. And I'm going to bring it up a little row. Yeah, I feel better about that. All right, we have to finish the beak and the wattle. So I am going to line some highlighting on the wattle. Oh, and the scarf. Line some highlighting on the wattle with royal fuchsia. And that's not going to show a whole lot. So let's pick up some warm white and add it to our royal fuchsia. That will show. Okay, so while we let that dry, let's work on our beak. We're going to float a highlight across the top of the beak with warm white. And this is going to help that beak stand out a little more. Now our scarf. We need to think of something to do to make our scarf cute. We have dots. I guess we could do stripes. So let's go ahead and dry brush some highlighting on our scarf with lavender plus warm white. I'm going to have you pull another color out, which I'll probably do anyway. But for right now, we're just going to lighten up our lavender a little bit. And let's just lighten up our lavender a lot. So every little section of this little scarf is going to get dry brushed with lavender plus warm white. Oh, he looks better already. We can go back to our beak now, and we can float shading in the tip of the beak with some spiced pumpkin. I like that. We need to shade on the wattle, and we can go ahead and do that with country red plus just a tidge of burnt umber, I think. More burnt umber than country red. So we want to float that on the wattle next to the beak. And we need to float it in the bottom of each of the wattle sections, and also to separate the sections from each other. Let's give our wattle a couple of little brighter highlight dots, and let's give our beak a couple of little nostrils. Let's go back to our scarf, and let's go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and use a number 6 flat, and I'm going to give the scarf some stripes. I just haven't decided what color. Maybe some yellow ones. So I'm going to follow the shape of the scarf, and it doesn't matter if I run out of paint or if they're kind of sketchy, it'll be okay. And let's add some to the ties. And one to the, or the look of one in the knot. I think we need to float just a touch of burnt umber in the tip of the beak. Yeah. I like having the orange in there, but it needed to be a little bit darker. Okay, getting so close. We need to, let's line a little highlight on these yellow stripes, or stroke a little highlight with warm white. We can use that number 6 flat again. This is going to stay mainly through the centers. Doesn't take much. See how quickly that happened? And then I think we'll go ahead and line some smaller stripes on either side of the yellow ones. And we'll go ahead and do that with, oh, we have a hat band to do too. Let's go ahead and do it with our royal fuchsia so we can pull that color in. So just on either side, we're just going to line some royal fuchsia. That wakes the scarf up. And then we just have some shading to do on our scarf, and we can go figure out what we're going to do to the hat band. Okay, so I'm going to go grab some dioxazine purple so we can float shading on our scarf. Okay, so just a little bit of diox purple, and we're just going to float shading on our scarf. I'm going to go the outside edges of the scarf. Or the part that goes around his neck. I'm going to go under the knot. I'm going to go in the bottom of the knot. Go next to the knot. Let's go on the short tail next to the long tail, just to put it behind. And we can go across the bottom of the long tail. And then we just need to go on the top and the bottom of the parts that go around his neck. So just there. Let's go here. And then I'm going to go along the bottom. And the bottom on this side. All right. Now we can go ahead and line a little bit brighter highlight on that scarf with a liner brush and some thinned warm white that has a touch of lavender in it. I'm going to go up this front little tie in the top of the knot. And I'm going to go across the top of the part that goes around his neck. just to give it a little bit more dimension. And I guess you could go up this one too, not all the way. All right, so now we need to work on that hat band. And I think I'm gonna pull out a piece of drywall tape. All right, I've got some drywall tape. Drywall tape is the one that's mesh. And so I'm just gonna put it on here. And I think let's do some Irish moss. And I'm gonna stencil some checks on this hat band with Irish moss. Now, I'm not going to take the tape off just yet. I'm going to pick up a little moon yellow on my dirty brush, and I'm going to stencil lighter checks through the center. And then I can take off my drywall tape. And you hang on to this because you can use it again and again and again and again. And what's kind of nice, it has a sticky back, so it doesn't move when you use it. All right, so we need to let that dry. And then we'll go ahead and float some shading on our hat band. And I think we'll do that with Country Red. And I'm just basically going to do that on the two sides and across the bottom. Yeah. Okay. So now we have our little guy painted. We need to give him some ground to stand on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my flat brush and I'm going to corner load it on one side with Black Forest Green, and then I'm going to corner load the other side with Irish Moss, and just kind of tap and blend it a little bit on my palette. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the Irish Moss side up. I'm just going to start setting down. See, my brush is held straight up and down, and I'm just kind of setting down some grass, or what I'm going to call grass. Okay, and reload as often as you need to. I want some of this grass to go in front of my pumpkin. Okay, just a quick and easy way to add some grass in this foreground here. You don't want to cover up his little feet completely, but you need to get a little bit in front of his toes. Because, I mean, you did work so hard on those feet. So we're just going to tap in a little bit of grass there so he's not floating. All right, so once that dries, we can put the pattern on for our lettering. All right, so the pattern's on for my lettering. What I want to do is I want to use my, I'm going to use my number 2, or do I want to use number 4? I think I'll use Decisions. I think I'll try my number 4 liner. And I'm going to use Warm White. What I want to do is I want to flatten that brush out so it has more of a square tip than a pointy tip. And I'm going to paint my lettering on. It's not going to look just exactly like the pattern, but it'll be awful darn close. By flattening that brush out, you can get a nice fat line. So don't hurry. There's no race going on here. We're going to do some stuff to make this lettering stand out even more. But it shouldn't take too long. I say that with a grin. It can take as long as it needs to. All right, one done. I'm going to do this bottom here. You can thin your paint down, not a whole lot, because you want it to be pretty opaque. It doesn't have to be perfect, obviously. I really need to clean this brush out a little bit. Alrighty. So while we let the lettering dry, we're going to go ahead, because I always like to add some kind of border to this, to the piece, so that once your eye has taken in the design that you painted, it starts to move off. And you don't want them to look at it and move off right away. You want them to look at it and start to move off, and they get stopped by a border. The eye gets stopped by a border, and so it focuses on what you painted some more. Now, if you don't like what you painted, then don't put a border on it, and that way they won't look at it as long, right? Trying to decide what color I want to do this little border. I was thinking white, but since the lettering's white, I may go ahead with my standard black. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to corner load my flat brush, and I'm going to start up here by the holes, and I'm just going to do a little squiggly kind of border, just wiggling that corner loaded edge of that flat brush around a little bit, so it's not a straight border. It's got a little interest on its own. And it shouldn't take too long. Unless you're trying to get the perfect squiggles. Then it could take a long time. But I'm going to finish this up, and I'll be back, and we'll do a little bit more to the lettering. Alright, so I just want this lettering to stand out a little bit more. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my flat brush, I'm going to corner load and blend out some Irish moss, and I'm just going to float some Irish moss in the bottom of each letter, like the bottom half of each letter, just to make it stand out a little bit more. Okay. It's going to need some shading too. Let's go to the bottom. Doesn't take long to pop this green in there. And then we're also going to come back with our midnight blue and add a little shadow to the left side of each letter, just to pop it off the background a little bit more. So I'm going to take my number 2 liner and I'm going to make a wash of midnight blue. And I'm just going to line a little shadow to the left side of each letter. Now, there's a left side on the outside of the C, and there's a left side on the inside of the C. So wherever there's a left side, you line this shadow. And I know it seems like a lot to do, but it does make a difference. Okay, that one got a little dark. So we'll just take it off with our finger. That's why God gave you fingers and spit. So I'm going to finish this and I'll be back. Alright, so I did that shading to the lettering and I think you can see that it made it stand out just a little bit more. And I'm just going to do one more little thing, and this is completely up to you whether you do it or not. Along with this black edging, I'm going to go ahead and give it a little line of warm white, just to make it stand out a little bit more. And this is going to be another one of those things that I think it needs, but if you don't think it needs it, or you didn't do this little black edging, then okay, you're done. But I think you can see it does add a little bit to this. Of course, everything adds just a little bit. Depends on how many little bits you want to add, I guess. All right. I think that we are going to call this little guy done. So I hope you had fun creating him with me, him or her. I think it's a her. Yeah, with his hat, it's a her. Anyway, I hope you have a great time painting your own, and I'll see you again next month for Halloween and Holiday Addicts Anonymous.